Every human used to have to hunt or gather to survive, but humans are smartly lazy, so we made tools to make our work easier. From sticks to plows to tractors, we've gone from everyone needing to make food to modern agriculture with almost no one needing to make food. And yet, we still have abundance. Of course, it's not just farming, it's everything. We've spent the last several thousand years building tools to reduce physical labor of all kinds. These are mechanical muscles, stronger, more reliable, and more tireless than human muscles ever could be. And that's a good thing. Replacing human labor with mechanical muscles frees people to specialize, and that leaves everyone better off, even those still doing physical labor. This is how economies grow and standards of living rise. Some people have specialized to be programmers and engineers whose job is to build mechanical minds. Just as mechanical muscles made human labor less in demand, so are mechanical minds making human brain labor less in demand. This is an economic revolution. You may think we've been here before, but we haven't. This time is different. When you think of automation, you probably think of this: giant, custom built, expensive, efficient, but really dumb robots blind to the world and their own work. They were a scary kind of automation, but they haven't taken over the world because they're only cost effective in narrow situations. But they're the old kind of automation. This is the new kind. Meet Baxter. Unlike these things, which require skilled operators and technicians and millions of dollars, Baxter has vision and can learn what you want him to do by watching you do it, and he costs less than the average annual salary of a human worker. Unlike his older brothers, he isn't pre-programmed for one specific job. He can do whatever work is within the reach of his arms. Baxter is what might be thought of as a general-purpose robot, and general purpose is a big deal. Think computers. They too started out as highly custom and highly expensive, but when cheap-ish general-purpose computers appeared, they quickly became vital to everything. A general-purpose computer can just as easily calculate change or assign seats on an airplane or play a game or do anything just by swapping its software. And this huge demand for computers of all kinds is what makes them both more powerful and cheaper every year. Baxter today is the computer of the 1980s. He's not the apex, but the beginning. Even if Baxter is slow, his hourly cost is pennies worth of electricity, while his meat-based competition costs minimum wage. A tenth the speed is still cost effective when it's 100th the price. And while Baxter isn't as smart as some of the other things we will talk about, he's smart enough to take over many low-skilled jobs. And we've already seen how dumber robots than Baxter can replace jobs. In new supermarkets, what used to be 30 humans is now one human overseeing 30 cashier robots. Or take the hundreds of thousands of baristas employed worldwide. There's a barista robot coming for them. Sure, maybe your guy makes the double mocha whatever just perfect and you'd never trust anyone else, but millions of people don't care and just want a decent cup of coffee. Oh, and by the way, this robot is actually a giant network of robots that remembers who you are and how you like your coffee no matter where you are. Pretty convenient. We think of technological change as the fancy new expensive stuff, but the real change comes from last decade stuff getting cheaper and faster. That's what's happening to robots now.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Start Small Think Big podcast, brought to you by Digital Meld. My name is Brad Groux, founder and CEO of Digital Meld. Today, we're talking about, is AI coming for your job? A deep dive into automation across industries. The video we just heard a snippet from is from a popular YouTuber named CPG Gray, and it's called Humans Need Not Apply. And it goes over automation and AI and jobs and created over 10 years ago, and I've quoted it countless times. As I was teaching people about automation with Microsoft Power Automate as far back as 2017, and about the citizen developer platform and Microsoft no-code, low-code solution, and basically telling people to empower themselves to upskill so they can be automation proof. And I think one reason we started this podcast was to evangelize and encourage folks to upskill and to learn more. Gone are the days of graduating with a college degree and having the same job for 30 years and retiring with the same company. I think you're going to have to pivot many times in your career now. And I think the world's just moving so fast and our ability to learn is moving so quickly that I think you're just going to have to. I think to differentiate yourself from the masses, you're going to need to know how to, set yourself apart. And the beauty is AI is going to help you do that. And so you can either be anxious and worry about the future, or you can just, lead from the front. And I think we would encourage most people to try to lead them from the front. AI is going to come for jobs. There's no doubt about that. And we're going to hear a plethora of people today talk about that. People much smarter than myself talk about that. I think universally people know that AI is going to change the world. I think where we disagree is how it's going to change the world, and is it going to be a net positive for humans? I personally think it will be a net positive for humans, and I'll talk about that in this episode. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think from everything you've learned from our podcast and or your own sources and your own life and your own business? Do you think AI is going to be a net positive for us? And I encourage you to reach out to us at linktree.com/digitalmeld. That'll give you access to all of our websites and all of our social medias and every place you can ever need to contact us. We also have a form on there if you'd like to be on the podcast or share your story with the podcast so we can share it with the audience and encourage other people. Are you upskilling and learning more? Please let us know. I'd love to hear more. Again, you can also reach us at contact@digitalmeld.io at any time, or you can leave a message on our LinkedIn or just search for me, Brad Groux, BradGroux. I'm literally the only one in the world. I've used my real name across the internet for 20 plus years. I am not hard to find. I promise you. So we'd love to hear from you. Our feedback has been phenomenal so far. We get thousands of views every week across all platforms and all formats. And so thank you so much for being a part of that. Hopefully you're learning more. We started this podcast because we really care about people and we really care about sharing this information. And we know that you can be empowered by this. We truly believe technology is a great equalizer. And we think that you will be able to punch above your weight class and succeed. Yourself as an individual, your family, your company, your team within your company. We think if you embrace a lot of what we talk about, that you're going to differentiate yourself and you're going to come out on top. And the beauty again is all the technologies that we talk about are the same technologies that the largest companies in the world are using, you can use, and your team can use, and your company can use, regardless of size. That's the beauty of all of this, is like solopreneurs can compete and use some of the same tools that the largest companies in the world use for pennies on the dollar. And it's fantastic. And that's where I think AI is going to be a net positive for the world. We'll dive deeper in that as this goes on, but that's just how I believe so. And so we're going to start, again, Humans Need Not Apply is a video by CPG Gray. I highly recommend it. It's about 15 minutes long. It was released about 10 years ago, but it's still relevant to this day. I will be sharing that with all the other resources and then even resources that I'm not mentioning in the newsletter that comes out Monday on our LinkedIn page. Again, linktree.com/digitalmeld. There'll be a newsletter link right at the top of that. Click that. It'll take you to our LinkedIn page, or just search Start Small, Think Big on LinkedIn and you'll see our little purple logo and just click on that and you'll be able to get all of the details. We had something come up this week. I had an interview fall through as well. And so I was like, hey, I'm just going to fly solo on this one. And I thought, I'm just going to wing it for an hour. And then I went down a 3-day rabbit hole of resources and diving into interviews and videos. And I have a habit of doing that. And so I did a lot of the work for you. So if this is a topic you care about, hey, check out those resources. The first thing we're going to talk about is a Time magazine article. And again, I like showing the people that I kind of disagree with and get a better understanding of that, what their mindset is for this. And so this is a Time magazine article from this week. It's an opinion, and in the technology says, pausing AI developments isn't enough. We need to shut it all down. And I hope this is hyperbole because as they're showing here, this is a nuclear explosion with some circuits here. There's no possible way we're shutting down AI across the board, because if all peace-loving and free-thinking nations shut down AI development today, all the bad actors in the world are going to continue it. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they're going to continue it. And if we shut it down now, we're going to be left behind, and they're going to have a technological advantage unlike we've ever seen in the course of human history. More than gunpowder, more than ships, more than flight. They're going to have a higher superiority because they're going to have general intelligence and general superintelligence before we do. They bring up in this article all the same concerns most people do, the environmental impact. I've talked about that in previous episodes. I completely agree, but I also think that generative AI is going to help us unlock things faster, like carbon capture improvements and just across the board, geothermal improvements, nuclear improvements, fusion energy. It's going to help us unlock all those things faster. And so I think if we take the short term now and think about the long-term gains later, it's going to be a net positive. You may disagree. Again, would love to hear you if you do. Then they talk about the things like work displacement, which is what this episode is all about. And they're not wrong. People are going to lose jobs from this, but people are also going to gain jobs, and people are going to upskill and learn more and better themselves because of this. Again, do we know what those numbers look like now? No, but I also think Sam Altman was interviewed earlier this week. I think it was by Bloomberg Originals or one of those. And he was very honest about it. They're interviewing him about one of their new data centers that they're building in McAllen, Texas. And he was very honest about it. He's like, look, it's going to be peaks and valleys. There's going to be times where people were really down. There's going to be times where people were really up. It's all an unknown. It's uncharted territory, just like the Industrial Revolution was, just like the space race was, just like the Cold War was, just like the internet age was, the social media age was. It's all unknown. And until do we stop human development progression because of unknowns? I don't think so. I don't think that's what we've ever done as a species. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to be better off species because we go down this path. And I'd love to hear what your take is on this. I empathize with some of the things they're saying, and I agree with some of the things they're saying, but overwhelmingly disagree with the fact that like, oh, just shut this down tomorrow. It's the cat's out of the bag. You can't. It's already out there. People can develop AI on their own laptops right now. Because the models are already out there, so they're not going to stop it. And so what we can do is get in front of it, and what we can do is try to lead from the front. I think that's our best step forward. So the next topic again is going to be along those same lines, and this is another really interesting one. Again, it goes into the ethics discussion, and it kind of goes into where do we really go from here. And so it asks a philosophical question: if AI has free will, who's responsible for it when things go wrong? So think more about when AI has general intelligence, where there's autonomous robots or there's autonomous cars. And if an autonomous driving vehicle makes a decision and gets in an accident, who's at fault? Is it the driver who's at fault? Is it the owner driver who's at fault? Is it the person who hit them's at fault? Is it the software developer's fault? Is it the company who developed the car's fault? Like there's so many ethical questions that need to be decided, and they'll be decided in courtrooms. That's just the way it's always been, and it's the way it's always will be. And we'll hear about another one of those decisions in a minute. But I think this is an important question because, again, think about it from a business perspective. Let's say you have a chatbot on your website where your customers can go chat. What happens if that chatbot goes on like a racist rant or like says something negative about someone and you're sued for defamation? We're a litigious society. That could just literally happen. So you just need to know about those risks whenever you're rolling out these solutions. And I think these are the types of things you take these large conversations that are happening at the global scale and you scale those down to your business use case and or your team use case or your personal use case. And just know that there are ramifications for using from these things. As long as you know what those risks are, and I would recommend like getting a risk matrix and filling that out, working with your team to understand what those risks are. At some point, there's going to be an accident where it was caused by AI, if it hasn't already occurred. But that's just the ethics discussions. Again, we've been involved with the University of St. Thomas here in Houston at some of their events here, talking about the ethics of AI. They're a Catholic university and they embrace AI. They think it's really great, but they also said, hey, let's look at the human side. And I think it's very, very core tenet of developing an AI solution, especially for a business. This kind of gets us up to the next topic discussion. I think this one is probably the most interesting thing I'm sharing today because it sets an actual legal precedent. And there's nothing more important than setting a legal precedent, I think, in this space. And so a Florida judge rules an AI chatbot is not protected by First Amendment. This story is very, very sad. A teen boy downloaded an app that was a companion, an AI companion, and befriended it and fell in love with it, whatever you want to have you, and decided to end his life. And his family was kind of shocked by this interaction that this teenager had with this AI chatbot and sued the company. And the company tried to have the lawsuit thrown out on First Amendment grounds. And a federal judge has declined to dismiss that lawsuit. So that lawsuit is moving forward. So now there is a legal precedent that what an AI chatbot says is not protected by the First Amendment. So again, back to that discussion we just had, if you have a chatbot on your website, your company can be held liable for what that chatbot says. So you need to lay your foundation, lay your groundwork, and make sure you're doing all the right things to protect yourself and your company whenever you're doing something like that. Again, just very, very important topics to have. And we're building the train as it's going down the tracks. We just are. And you can either wait until the tracks are built and then build your train, but you're going to be so far behind. And I guess we're going to get to this in a few minutes about why these companies are building things so quickly. And so we'll talk about that again, but like you can either wait till everything's built and then start your journey, or you can build your foundation now and then start building small little trains or eventual cars, like very specific use cases instead of like building these big generic use cases. And you can still start the journey now and still be safe and be risk adverse. This was fascinating to me that there was legal precedent set about AI chatbots. So I just had to share it. And I think it's very relevant to the conversations we're having today. So now we're going to get to basically the meat and potatoes of the conversation today. Is AI going to be a net positive for humanity or a net negative? There are a lot of people right now who are very wary and very scared of AI and are talking about the nightmares that could possibly happen. We can agree to disagree and or try to understand where they're coming from and or we can debate whether what's right or wrong, but I think it's important that we hear from every side and make our own decisions. I'm going to share an interview from tech journalist Karen Howe. She's the author of Empire of AI, Dreams and Nightmares in Sam Altman's OpenAI. It's a book that was recently released, so she's on the press tour kind of showing those things. So I want to hear from someone what she says, but for the most part, she brings up many of the same things. The environmental impact is really bad. Societal harms. She believes the path could negatively impact jobs, environmental health, economic opportunity, and access to reliable information. She's not really wrong. I think she's wrong probably on the scope of that, but we'll hear about that in a second. But she also talks of the misapplication of general AI. She talks about how generalizing AI use case is not necessarily a good thing, but the focused, honed ones in like healthcare and things like that are really great. And again, she's not necessarily wrong, but I think she has a skewed reason on why they're chasing that general AI. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And then the big thing that she really has a concern with is a lack of transparency, which you're going to hear that as a recurring theme through all of these dissenters. And again, I don't think they're wrong. I think it's just what options do we have, I think is the really thing. Damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing.
The way that Silicon Valley and OpenAI leading the charge has really approached AI development is very much an embodiment of the way Silicon Valley has developed technology over the last decade, which is growth at all costs. They have really chosen to pursue AI models that are extraordinarily large. They require a lot of data, a lot of labor, a lot of computational resources, which has environmental implications. And my greatest concern is that we are pursuing a path of AI development that is extremely harmful to a lot of people around the world.
In terms of jobs?
In terms of jobs, in terms of their environmental health, their ability to access economic opportunity, to access quality information. And AI is a beneficial technology if we can also mitigate all of the ways that the supply chain of the current
one is
version
worse
of
than
AI
the other
development.
at the moment.
Yeah, so there are many different types of AI technologies.
But you see, is there a line at which you say to yourself, this is actually going to improve people's lives, it's going to improve productivity to a level where it's going to create economic efficiencies, going to create opportunities, all sorts of things? Or do you see that that's sort of a fantasy?
No, so I think there are AI technologies that tackle very specific challenges and are well scoped. That is very different from general AI technologies that are supposedly meant to do anything. If we can target AI towards problems that AI is very good for, optimization problems, computational problems, healthcare, towards integrating more renewables into the grid. These are things that AI is very good at. They are also well scoped. So it's not nebulous how you should be applying AI in that situation. But right now, these Silicon Valley companies are trying to make everything machines. And when you're trying to make everything machines, not only are they not going to be high quality in everything, people are going to have a fundamental misunderstanding about how they should be using these technologies. And inevitably, it is going to harm them.
Okay, I'll just say Karen brings up a lot of good points. Silicon Valley does like grow at all costs. They always have. I think they always will. That's capitalism. With that said, I think she knows what she's talking about, but at the same time, maybe she's hiding some things and or not being completely honest about the problems they're actually trying to solve, basically to sell a book. I do agree with her that specialized use cases is what businesses need to focus on, individual businesses and individual users. The problems you're trying to solve are very specific to you and utilize the data very specific to you. And you need to train it on that data and or that workflow and or that nugget of information that's very specific to you to solve that niche, that little problem that's specific to you. I 100% agree. That's where most companies and most individuals will start. Generative AI is a completely different ballgame. They're dumping as much as they can into these data centers for generative AI because they're trying to unlock artificial general intelligence. And then from there, artificial superintelligence. Why are they trying to do that? Because that is a new arms race. Whoever unlocks artificial general intelligence first is going to have a tremendous leg up on the rest of the world. This is a new Oppenheimer moment. It truly is. And the people that unlock artificial general intelligence first can either be destructive with it or they can use it as a show of force and then hold the world accountable. And that's exactly what we did with Oppenheimer, the mutually assured destruction. And I think whenever you have artificial general intelligence, you're going to have much of that same kind of discussion. And again, I don't want to head down this dystopian path, but if a free thinking society in Western countries unlock this first, they're going to have a leg up over the authoritarian regimes who could use this for negative use cases. And I'm talking about China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. They're the people we have to beat. This is a new arms race, whether we like it or not. And I think most people in this industry will say that. If they don't say that, they're just trying to stay relatively neutral and they don't want to raise the flags and give you anxiety. I don't think it needs to be anxiety inducing because I think the good, quote unquote, good guys are going to win. But again, I think there are going to be mistakes made along the way. There are going to be people who are going to be sacrificed, for lack of a better word, or maybe even stepped upon or forgotten. But I don't think that's really different than any other time in human history. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, there was still child labor. Women didn't have rights. Minorities didn't have rights. The same thing during the World War II, whenever we had to ramp up our manufacturing. OSHA didn't exist. We were doing that with the space race. We weren't being as safe and secure as we could during the space race. We couldn't. We were trying to beat Russia. I think with AI, it's much the same. Unfortunately, in all of human history, it's built upon the backs of the less fortunate. And that's just the truth. I'm not saying that's what we should go for and that should be what we should strive for. We should 100% do our best to make sure that doesn't happen, but we can't. It's a numbers problem. There's 7.3 billion people in the world. We can't save everyone as much as we'd like to. And I think once we get to artificial general intelligence, we're going to have a better chance of saving more people. And others within this conversation are going to have much more to say about that. Again, much smarter than me. Don't take my word for it. I truly think that artificial general intelligence is going to be revolutionary. Cure cancer, help with carbon capture, help with fusion energy, all of the above. Yes, it'll be used for bad things too. It certainly will. Every piece of technology ever built has always been used for bad. I think the good will overwhelmingly outnumber the bad. And I reflect back to my childhood. I was watching a Mr. Rogers episode, and he was asked by a child, "What do you do during an emergency?" And he's like, he said, "My mother always told me to look out for the helpers." That's what I'm going to look at with this. Look at the people doing good with AI. I think that's going to happen. People will be, solving all the world's biggest problems, but I think you're going to have individuals in the middle of nowhere doing great things with it too. And do we want to stifle that innovation and that the freedom it brings for all those people because of the fears of it? We've always been best as a species when we were reaching for the stars and when we were dreaming big. I personally don't think you stop the train just because you don't like everything that's going on. The momentum's too big, and the cost of being second is too big. So up next, we're going to dive into something that's literally about jobs, right? And so that's how AI is changing art for creatives. And this is another interview. Again, I'll share the link, but the rise of generative AI and art. Generative AI is changing how art is created, producing images, videos, music, increasingly difficult to distinguish from human-made content. This has happened even more this week because Google released their VO3, like video generation, which also does audio now. So you can literally have spoken language videos, and they're really, really accurate. So with a simple prompt, you can get like a 30-second snippet of a real video of real people talking, and it's mind-blowing. I encourage you to go take a look at some of the videos created by that. People are going to get fooled, and deepfakes are going to happen. But should we not push that envelope because of that? No. I think, again, technology is going to help keep that in check, but I don't think you stop the train at all, personally. If you disagree with me, please let me know. I want to hear from you. I'm a technologist at heart. Whatever gets us closer to the surface of Mars and or outside our solar system, that's what I want. I'm a space nerd at the end of the day, and I think all of this gets us closer. So major issues include the origin of training data. That's very important. Intellectual property and artists' lack of control over their work being used without their consent. My feeling is if you publish something on the internet, the cat's out of the bag. You don't really have a claim to it. I agree that you do own it. You 100% own it, but it's someone right click save as, that's theirs. They can do with it what they want. That's just the freedom of the internet. It's the Wild West. It's always been the Wild West. If you put something out there, someone's going to steal it. Someone's going to train it. The way to solve that is not to live online, but then you limit your audience, then you limit your reach, then you limit all the limitations of that. There's a reason we love the internet, because it empowers us. And the moment you remove yourself from that, you remove that empowerment. We're going to see this clip here, and then I'll have a couple more comments about it.
A lot of people have questions about where training data comes from in order to train generative AI models. The real issue with intellectual property and generative AI is that all of the principles in intellectual property law say that if you create something, then you own it. It is your intellectual property. And generative AI companies have largely ignored this long-standing legal guideline and have taken people's intellectual property, used it to train their models without consent and without paying for that privilege. And often the developers themselves don't know what's in these large data sets because they're just grabbing large data sets off of the internet. There are just a lot of places online where there are huge amounts of data hanging out. And you just collect all of them, and there you go. You've got a huge training data set.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what she just said there. I think for sure OpenAI and others scrape the internet and use whatever training data they could get. But at the same time, when has that never not really been the case? Again, if you put it out there, you have to just expect that it's going to be stolen, right? I remember would you download a car, thing from like the Napster days, right? The silly PSA. If it's out there, people are going to use it, and you just have to expect that. I think that you have to put that in as part of the business model. I realize that the IP laws were written 240 years ago, but that just hasn't kept pace with the technology. I think those have to be revisited. And that's just the way the modern web is built, with APIs and accessing data and scraping. I think this is something that's just going to correct itself over time. The starving artist has always been a thing, right? The upper 1% of artists, or fraction of 1% of artists, are the only ones that actually make a living doing it, right? Like the busker on the corner is not making the same thing as Metallica. So do they deserve all the same rights as Metallica? Yes. But do they have the financial backing to defend their rights as much as Metallica? No. And that's just, the world's not fair. That's just the way it is. But I think companies and individuals also have the ability and the right to say, I don't need to pay a digital artist because I can get generated thumbnails. And I'll be the first one to tell you, we use generative AI to help generate our thumbnails. I do some editing too, but it gets us, 70 to 80% of there. And I do the last 20 or 30%. And it just saves me an hour a week. I would be doing that myself, but now I can just use generative AI to help me do that. And I think that's a great thing. And so many other people are. So many people who aren't artistic are now able to express themselves artistically. But AI is definitely changing the creative arts. And we'll have a discussion, I think, in the near future with someone who works in that space, who can give us some insights about how they're leveraging AI. And I think that's going to be really great. They're not just turning their blind eye. They know it's coming, so you might as well use it and see that. Hopefully we have that discussion with them in the next week or two. I think the people in that space just need to learn to adapt. And I think there's always going to be a place for the boutique, right? There's going to be a place for the artisan, the handmade crafts, the handmade goods. And so I think there's always going to be a place for that. So now we're going to talk about basically what kind of spurred this. There has been a big outcry in the last week and a half because of the CEO of Anthropic. Anthropic is an AI company, one of the leading AI companies, and Dara Amadei is the CEO of that. And he's gone on, basically, he thinks that over the next 1 to 5 years, that 50%, up to 50% of all entry-level white-collar jobs are going to go away. He was all over the news cycles this week, so I'm going to play one of the clips from CNN and let him kind of talk, and then I'm going to have my retort, basically.
Dario, you said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20%. How soon might that happen?
Well, let's, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. But just to back up a little bit, I've been building AI for over a decade. And I think maybe the most salient feature of the technology and what is driving all of this is how fast the technology is getting better. A couple of years ago, you could say that AI models were maybe as good as a smart high school student. I would say that now they're as good as a smart college student and sort of reaching past that. I really worry, particularly at the entry level, that the AI models are very much at the center of what an entry level human worker would do. And so it's hard to estimate, exactly what the impact would be. And there's always this question of adaptation. And these technology changes have happened before, but I think what is striking to me about this AI boom is that it's bigger and it's broader and it's moving faster than anything has before. And so compared to previous technology changes, I'm a little bit more worried about the labor impact simply because it's happening so fast that yes, people will adapt, but they may not adapt fast enough. And so there may be an adjustment period.
And so here he's right. The AI is rapidly evolving faster than anything before it. That's the truth. But the big thing is he's thinking at it from a Silicon Valley perspective, and he's thinking at it from that generative AI development perspective. So he's thinking at it like OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity and XAI and Meta AI and Google AI. He's thinking at it from that perspective, that they're all working so hard and pushing so much into building the AI sphere to getting to that relative general intelligence, to that super intelligence. He's thinking at it from that perspective. That is rapidly changing. You know what's not rapidly changing? Businesses. And businesses aren't rapidly changing because businesses can't rapidly change. Very few businesses are set up to change rapidly. They're all massive moving ships, and it takes a long time to steer them in the right direction. Most companies don't have their data where it needs to be successful with AI. So it is laughable to say that upwards of 50% of all entry-level white-collar jobs are going to go away in 1 year. It's laughable to say that in 5 years. Because I've talked to hundreds of mid-market and small enterprise businesses and even a couple of large enterprises businesses in the last 2 years about their AI journey and what that's going to look like. And none of them, not a single one has been fully prepared to jump feet first into the AI pool. You know why? Because Everybody's data is in disparate systems. It's in people's heads, for one. And we've talked about how that's going to be a burning of the Library of Alexandria whenever all these baby boomers retire and that knowledge is lost. It's in people's inboxes. It's in spreadsheets. It's in U drives and K drives and Y drives. And it's not in a centralized repository. It's not been through an ETL process or extract, transform, load, or an ELT process, extract, load, transform. It's in disparate systems. They have stuff in their ERP. They have stuff in their CRM. They have stuff in their project management solution. It's all over the place. And this is nearly every company I've ever talked to. Most of them are starting their journey to try to get a data lake and or all their data into a centralized system, but that journey is going to take years. You know why? Because you work in a company. What have you ever rapidly changed within your company? It just doesn't happen. You know why? Because there's so many stakeholders. But not only that, for AI to know how your business works, you have to know where your data is, and you have to know what your processes are. And again, most companies don't have their processes documented well. They do have it documented well. They're documented in silos. And so the marketing team knows how the marketing team works, and the operations team knows how the operations team works, and the HR team knows how the HR team works, because nobody knows how it works as a whole. Like, you know what I mean? There's just little people that have cross sections. And that's the problem. There's not like an AI center of excellence or a data center of excellence in most of these organizations. And I went through a center of excellence transition with a company of 1,500 employees, and it took us 2.5 years. And that was for a design center of excellence for product-wise. And that took 2.5 years. And to think you're going to get these large companies to have all of their data transformed overnight is laughable. AI can't help you with that. AI can't talk to June in HR and Johnny in project management and Jake in operations and have them come together and have a great conversation. It can help facilitate it, and it can help streamline that process. But those three need to come together and have those conversations, say, where are we going to store our data? Where's our data even at? What are our processes? You can't automate that away. And so it's laughable to me that he says 1 to 5 years. And the funny thing is I'm not alone in that. So Mark Cuban also agrees with me. And so Mark Cuban of the Dallas Mavericks fame, of broadcast.com fame, of Shark Tank fame, of Cost Plus Drugs now fame, he came out with a retort, basically just kind of come out debunking that. And he said, someone needs to remind CEO that at one point there were more than 2 million secretaries. There were also separate employees to do in-office dictation. There were the original white-collar displacements. There's always been white-collar displacements. Like, people are going to evolve. And the beauty is these tools are going to help people do that. And that's one reason we started this podcast. That's one reason I want to be evangelist and help people. You have the power to do this. If I can do it, you can do it. Everything I know about AI, I'm self-taught and self-learned. I learned at my own pace. I don't necessarily say self-taught, because there are a lot of experts like Daniel Ng from deeplearning.ai, been very helpful. MIT courses, Harvard courses, Coursera, edX, Microsoft.com/learn, on the gamut. But I've learned at my own pace, and so can you. And just dive in head first. And the beauty is, like, you can even ask ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. It's like, I want to learn more about AI. This is my job role. Can you give me a job role specific learning, 3-month plan to learn more about AI? I have 2 extra hours a week, and it'll give you a learning path to know how to do that. Go for it. I challenge you. You can do it. I know you can. But again, even Mark Cuban doesn't bring up what I brought up, which was basically these companies aren't ready for AI. They're just not. And there's no turnkey AI solution at the large business scale. There is not. Short of like just turning on Microsoft Copilot. But even then, you need to do some training. You need to do some security and governance. You need to do all those sorts of things. There's no real turnkey solution at the business level. And I think this is where the Silicon Valley guys kind of lose sight, because many of them have not worked like in a Fortune 500 company and or a global scale company or a large scale company of any kind that's not in their little bubble. And B, they're trying to sell a product, right? And so they're just like, AI, here it is, turn it on. It's a SaaS product. That's just not the reality of it. I also found he had another Business Insider article that I think is actually worth reading, that's from December of 2024. And he talks about many of the same things. Jobs that take intellectual capacity aren't really going to go anywhere, at least not overnight, not in 1 to 5 years. And I would even challenge that some of the 50% of the entry level white collar jobs are going to go away. Like, a lot of those take thought, right? I think some people that should worry are people that do like data entry, dictation, like document ingestion, OCR type stuff, people who work with contracts, like paralegals and things, but they're already utilizing these things. And the way I see it is like, these are really smart people doing really smart things. They're just going to take that time that they freed up from doing this automated jobs to pivot to something else to help boost like a paralegal is going to have, I don't need to work on these contracts, so I can go help do research for this other client, or I can do research for this other case, or, there's just a lot of things that can be done. And so I don't think that just because something's going to be automated means that someone's going to be laid off. A good company is always going to try to upskill, because hiring a good person is the hardest thing you can do. It takes 6 months for them to get up to speed. Like, hiring people is the biggest cost sink of all. And so if you have a good person, you're not going to let them walk away just because you automate their job away. I don't think a good business leader. And if the company lets you go for that, then you're probably better off anyway. So use these tools to upskill and then just get ahead of the curve and then get a better job. If you don't think you can do that, reach out to me. I'd love to help you and guide you in that way because I think you can. Again, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's one thing I just want to keep preaching is, and it does sound preachy and I'm sorry. And it's, if I can do it, you can do it. You can. So just know that you can and know that you have time. But get ahead, and your businesses, if your business is behind as well, just know that if your company is in a state, you don't have the capital to have your small business or your medium-sized business or your small enterprise to move to AI right now, you're not alone. 95% of businesses aren't ready. 95% of businesses aren't moving forward. I know because I've talked to them and I've talked to hundreds of businesses over the last 2 years and most aren't moving forward. They're getting ready and they're thinking about it and they're starting the foundation, documenting their processes. They're talking about ways that they can utilize AI internally. It's too early for them. And that's going to be most organizations that don't have 5 years of runway in the bank, right? They're going to be risk adverse. That's going to hurt them in growth in the long run, but that doesn't mean they can't start now. Very few companies are ready to go full bore with AI. And that's okay. That's okay. But just know that you should be ready and you should get started. And happy to help you do that. Just reach out. Okay. So now that we've talked about the white collar bloodbath that I don't think is actually coming, we'll talk about an area that I do think is going to be heavily affected by AI and automation, and that is shipping and logistics. And it already is, right? It's like shipping and logistics. Much like Uber displaced the taxi environment, Waymo is going to attack Waymo, and Tesla taxis and Uber taxis are going to displace the gig worker. They just are. I was in San Francisco last year at the Snowflake conference, and we rode in a Waymo. And after the 2 or 3 rides, you don't even realize that there's not a driver anymore because it drives just like a human. It does the little pauses and they've done an amazing job. And for the people who don't know, Waymo is the automated driver, is the automated taxis basically that was started by Google. I think 2016 or 2015. And they've spun off the business, but it's a fantastic business model and it's expanding out to more and more cities. They just announced a bunch of new improvements on Google I/O's. That's Google's yearly conference and it's coming. But also Aurora AI is shipping trucks. And so I live in Houston, Texas, and Aurora AI has automated trucks driving from Houston to Dallas every single day. And Dallas to Houston every single day. So folks that don't know, the port of Houston is the port that feeds all of middle America. It's one of the biggest shipping hubs in the United States and the biggest shipping hubs in the world. And so the I-45 corridor, which goes again from Houston to Dallas, is one of those major thoroughfares. And they started a couple weeks ago. They have fully autonomous trucks. They still have drivers in there, with their hands waiting to do something. Going back to CPG Gray's Humans You Need to Apply, 25% of the U.S. economy is transportation based. And I think, again, we talked about this before in previous episodes, it all comes down to underwriting. Once the insurance companies see that it's $1 less per mile for insurance for an automated truck or an automated taxi over a normal truck or normal taxi, that's when the company's going to flip the switch, right? That's once it becomes cheaper, they're just going to do it. It's the economics of it. And unfortunately, it's going to affect things like delivery drivers as well. They have what they call the last mile. And so a drone will fly to a neighborhood and at a landing pad or a parking lot and then drive 1 mile with the package. I drive with 1 mile with the package to the door, drop it off in the door, then drive back to the landing pad and take off. Caltech, who was the college that founded NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, way back in the 60s during the space race, they had a great video about that, about how they have a drone that could fly, land, drive, drop off package, drive, fly, take back off. That's because most people don't want a drone landing in their front yard or on top of their house. And so and to get around that, it's hey, let's do the last mile. Much like with the Aurora trucks, they're going to do the same sort of thing. They're going to drive down I-45, which is just a 2-lane or 4-lane or 8-lane, depending on what part of 45 it is and how crazy it is. It's a straight shot, right? You don't want to take lefts and rights. You're just going straight north to south or south to north. And then the last mile or two to get to the shipping destination, they'll put a real truck driver in. They'll hop in a bus stop or something, hop in, drive that last mile, park it, unload it, drive it back out to that same spot, and it gets out, and then it drives up to 45 again. That's going to happen. It's already happening. It's not on a mass scale yet. I think in the next 2 to 5 years, it probably will be. Again, the automated taxis is coming, but taxis hopefully have seen the writing on the wall with that for the last 10 years with Lyft and Uber. But I don't know how we're going to recover from that. It's going to be 25% of our economy is based on transportation. So is that going to create more jobs? Is that going to create more opportunities? I think it certainly will. Where that is, I don't know. But that's something we haven't solved yet. So I'm going to play a clip from a news segment that was critical of Aurora trucks. And again, I think they're probably pushing the envelope a little too early. They want to beat everybody else.
Aurora has made some very serious claims about what their technology, the Aurora driver, can do.
In the U.S. alone, 6,000 people die in accidents with trucks on our freeways. The Aurora driver can drive that number to 0.
Now, they're going to guarantee that they're going to have no fatalities through any one of their driverless trucks. I'm willing to bet on that.
Because the Aurora driver has been tested without public oversight or regulation, a lot of their claims are hard to prove.
The Aurora driver will change lives.
One thing is clear, though. This is positioned to take jobs.
Human drivers are limited to 11 hours a day. The Aurora driver should be able to almost double that, if not more.
There are a lot of types of trucking jobs. One of them is called line haul trucking.
These are some of the best jobs in trucking. These are over-the-road drivers moving from motor carrier terminal to motor carrier terminal.
That's essentially what Aurora is hoping to prove it can do with the Dallas to Houston route.
They've been running that same route for years now. And so that's really how it's going to roll out for these better jobs, is those ones that go along a particular lane, right, between an origin and destination. Those are going to be the ones that get automated next.
So as you can see there, I think there are some concerns to be made with Aurora specifically. I think they are, kind of pushing the envelope probably a little too far, especially without oversight on big rig trucking. I think they're going to be displaced, and hopefully they see the writing on the wall and understand what's coming. But also I hope these companies are kind of held accountable and they're more prone to being safer than sorry. And what unfortunately I think is going to happen is eventually it's going to just take a fatality, an accident, or a terrible accident, like with multiple fatalities to like slow this progress. We'll see. But I think the transportation industry is the one industry that really worries me on upskilling and getting people new jobs. And especially as the transportation industry is a very immigrant focused job market. Hopefully, again, they have time to upskill. This is the one area that I truly am worried about automation, but this is something that has literally been coming for 10 years. As we start wrapping things up, I think it's funny that professors and teachers are dealing with AI, right? And last week we talked about how AI, the automated AI checks, kind of thought that the Declaration of Independence was written by AI, like a 99.9%. So like the automated checks aren't necessarily the way forward for that now, because you can fool AI with AI. But I think it's cool because they're going back to old school days with like blue books or making students write their actual essays. So we're gonna have one clip from a professor who's been making rounds. Not only did he catch a student cheating on their essay with ChatGPT, the apology from the student was also written by ChatGPT. And so it's very easy to notice ChatGPT if you use it every day. You can say, it's ChatGPT. Generally, if you see the EM dash, the extended dash, that's probably ChatGPT, or there's emojis, or there's random boldings, that's probably ChatGPT. Here's a quote from the tweet. I just failed a student for submitting an AI written research paper, and she sent me an obviously AI written email apology asking if there was anything she could do to improve her grade. We are through the looking glass, folks. So I'm going to play this little clip from him, and then I thought it was humorous and just another point that like AI is coming, but it's not fooling everyone.
Yeah, a lot of professors are going back to the blue books. Remember those when we had to write essays? So it proves your work. You had to write out your essays or your math problems. In fact, at UC Berkeley, the blue book sales are up 80%. Blue book sales at Texas A&M up 30%, and at UF up 50%. How do professors tackle this? Because everyone apparently is using AI.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a as a fiction writer and as a writing professor, I think in-class writings is one way to do it. But I mean, anybody who writes knows that the writing process is, you need to be alone for that sometimes. And so in-class writing works. But I've also been using Google assignments and it kind of almost feels like I'm giving away my secrets and students are listening. But Google assignments, and you can track the document history, and it'll show you minute by minute how the student put the paper together. You can see if they made edits. You can see if they misplaced a comma. You can see all of that stuff. And so when you see that at this minute there was no paper, and then at this minute there was an entire paper, something came in. So you
can check each student using this device.
Yeah. And I mean, just for the time's sake, I don't usually do it with every student. But like I said, if I sniff out something, I'll go and then check the document history, and I'll see, is anything fishy?
What are you hearing? What's the feedback from the 15 million that viewed this post and from parents?
The general feedback I was getting online was most people were on my side, that this is cheating. I mean, this is our generation's copy and paste. This was like copying and pasting. I heard some of the arguments on the other side were things like, this is the future. We need to teach them to use tools of the future, which to me is sort of a kind of kind of a cop out. You're sort of you're not addressing the moral issue of whether this is a good thing. I mean, there's also the issue too of should this exist for students to use? I mean, it's a different question of whether we use it as a tool in the workplace or whatever. But for students, it's a different
Real quickly,
thing.
what was the reaction from this female in your class? She in tears? Was she sorry? Her apology was in AI?
I didn't. So the paper came in at the end of the semester, and so all I did was email her back.
I think that's quite humorous. I do think it's for students specifically. We had Arnold Castro from Texas A&M, Assistant Dean of AI for Texas A&M. Texas A&M is injecting AI into their entire curriculum to teach kids how to use AI for the business space. I think what the professor was saying here is like, there's a difference between students using AI to learn and students using AI to learn how to work. For writing specifically, obviously you shouldn't be generating and then just like you're writing an essay. I love what this guy's doing. He's using technology to help him flesh it out, like with the Google, you can see the document history and stuff. I think it is good students are using AI because that's what they're going to have to do in their real world business. That's what I'm telling you to do, to learn how to give yourself superpowers by using AI. Again, we said previously in the previous episodes that AI is going to make the easy problems automated. It's going to make the hard problems easy. And it's going to make the impossible problems hard. It's just everything's coming down a step. And I think that's a beautiful thing. You're going to be able to accomplish impossible tasks if you learn how to use AI within your scope of business and your scope of your role and that thing. And students should be doing that too. With that said, there's obviously times where you kind of need to know whether a student knows what they're talking about. But, it's changed dramatically, right? Students don't know how to read analog clocks. Students also don't know how to write cursive. I think we're going to have to change how we teach kids. We're teaching kids how we have since the 1860s. The reading, writing, arithmetic, that needs to change. I saw a great interview with Bernie Sanders on a podcast the other day. And again, I don't agree with Bernie on a lot of things, but he brought that up with the education aspects. Like, why are we still teaching kids like they taught him in the 50s and 40s? Now they're giving them laptops, but they're still teaching them the same things. They just have laptops now. So I agree with all of those things. I think we need to teach kids how to have practical thinking skills. I think it's great that colleges are going back to some of this stuff. I think the college experience, a lot of it is having that hands-on experience and that, having those debates, having those small groups. I think that's really great. And so I just thought it was hilarious. And just know that AI is not fooling everyone. And so the next one is Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek was discussing his concerns about the impact of artificial intelligence on humanity. He talks about the erosion of human skills, which I think is really important. We've talked about this previously, teaching kids soft skills, problem-solving skills, faith in your ability to figure things out. You need to have faith in your ability to figure things out. You can do this. And I think that's important. I'm going to play this next clip from Simon Sinek, and I think it's a really important one. It's the value of human error.
Have you ever heard of the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi?
No.
So wabi-sabi is a Japanese design concept, which is beauty in that which is temporary or imperfect. Okay? So have you ever seen Japanese ceramics?
Yeah.
They're wonky, or the glaze is not even.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful. You know why? Because they're handmade. Tree bark, trees. When you have a wooden bowl, wood is beautiful. Why? It's imperfect. Right? Unique. Things made on a machine are the same and less beautiful. And things made by hand are beautiful because they're imperfect. What makes people beautiful is not that we get everything right. It's that we get many things wrong. And what makes us fall in love is not the person who's perfect. It's the person who accepts our imperfections, and we know we're in love when we learn to accept theirs, not learn to want to. Right? And you're 100% right. I now know in the art world, artists are being asked to sign affidavits that say, I painted this. I made this, not AI. Not because it's better or worse. It's because I want to know it was touched by human hands. And so I think you're right. What will happen is everything will be so perfect that it'll be as if we're all driving or using things that everything came off a conveyor belt. And what we will start to desire is things that are made by hand. Because, by the way, we think Rolls-Royce, Ferrari. It takes 39 months to get a Ferrari. You know why? It was made by hand. Right? And one of the things that makes it expensive is the technology and the carbon fiber and all that. But the other thing is it's slow and it was made by people.
Human error, the value of human error.
The value of human error.
Scooter Braun said to me the other day, he said, we could watch a computer play chess with another computer. He goes, but the chess games that have the highest demand are one human versus another, because when a computer plays a computer, the moves are predictable and they're the same and they're perfect. But it's the human error of two human chess players who are worse, objectively worse, at chess, that makes it so fascinating.
Yes, that's any sporting event. Any sporting event. It's not the perfection of the game. It's the error that loses the game that adds the drama. And it's like trying not to make a mistake is as powerful as trying to get everything right. And it's the humanity of the sport, the humanity of the competition. It is the imperfection.
That's a great thing from Simon, talking about the human error and the value of human error. And I've talked about that artisanship, right? Like we've talked about that in previous episodes, that the rise of the artisan and its handmade goods and the people making knives and leather goods in their garage, that's become really important to people because we live in that Shein society, the throwaway society, or the Shein and Temu society. Because I think there's going to be value in human interaction in this world of AI, like business development, the handshake, the meeting at a conference, the talking to people over lunch, over a cup of coffee. That's not going away. You will be emboldened and or have the ability to act at a higher rate and or know more about your client or customer because you're utilizing AI, but you still need to have those interpersonal skills, those ability to figure things out, those ability to solve real world problems. You're still going to need that. AI is not going to fix all of that. And I do agree, at some point, the perfection is going to weigh on us. And I think it already has to an extent. Like, just look at LinkedIn right now. I think a lot of people are writing a lot of great posts on LinkedIn, and the meat and potatoes is like mostly of them, but then they go jump into ChatGPT and it adds all this verbosity. It adds fluff. That I get in the habit of this with editing this podcast. I remove a lot of ums and just like that. And some people are like, that's kind of jarring. And I do it more because of a time constraint, right? We want to keep your attention and we want to make sure that we're not wasting 30 minutes of your time as I stumble over words or have to re-say things. But there's a reason that they've started adding these fumbling of words to the voice actors that they have for this ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, because the uncanny valley of it being perfect is just really awkward to humans. We like the imperfection. Think of like the greatest supermodels, Cindy Crawford and her mole. That's an imperfection that's just, it's beautiful because it's striking and it's memorable. And I think that's going to be really important going forward. So I don't think AI is going to be the end all be all, because I think human connection, human touch is going to be very important, and it always has been. With all the negativity and kind of stuff we've talked about, I want to kind of leave this on what I think is the hopeful part. And so we're going to hear from Dr. Eric Schmidt again. We heard from Dr. Eric Schmidt 4 or 5 weeks ago whenever I had my other solo podcast for this, talking about the geopolitical aspects of generative AI and the need for power and energy consumption. He talks about something here, and I think it's really poignant to end on. Again, this went a lot longer than I thought it would, mainly because I'm so fascinated about all these conversations and I want to share it with you. And your feedback has been overwhelming, but just know that there's more information that I haven't shared that will be included in the show notes. And that kind of led me to this conversation, led me to have this, to speak about this for ad nauseum. Just so you know, this is the 3rd time I recorded this episode. The first time I recorded it, I messed up my mic. This is what happens when you record an episode solo. You don't notice these things because the other people aren't giving you instant feedback. And so this is where that human connection, human touch comes in. And the second time, I literally forgot to hit record and I got 40 minutes in it without noticing. And so again, that human connection, that human touch, that human error, it's very important. And if I was working with my cohorts, they would have let me know right away. But the fact that I'm working solo in my silo, here I am 4 hours later and I'm still recording. And it's just the way it is. But that was humorous. And so again, we're going to end on a positive note. And so we're going to hear from Dr. Eric Schmidt in his TED Talk.
In your book, Genesis, you strike a cautiously optimistic tone, which you obviously co-authored with Henry Kissinger. When you look ahead to the future, what should we all be excited about?
Well, I'm of the age where some of my friends are getting really dread diseases. Can we fix that now? Can we just eliminate all of those? Why can't we just take these and right now eradicate all of these diseases? That's a pretty good goal. I'm aware of one nonprofit that's trying to identify in the next 2 years all human druggable targets and release it to the scientists. If you know the druggable targets, then the drug industry can begin to work on things. I have another company I'm associated with which has figured out a way, allegedly, was a startup, to reduce the cost of stage 3 trials by an order of magnitude. As you know, those are the things that ultimately drive the cost structure of drugs. That's an example. I'd like to know where dark energy is, and I'd like to find it. I'm sure that there is an enormous amount of physics in dark energy, dark matter. And think about the revolution in material science. Infinitely more powerful transportation, infinitely more powerful science, and so forth. I'll give you another example. Why do we not have every every human being on the planet have their own tutor in their own language to help them learn something new, starting with kindergarten. It's obvious. Why have we not built it? The only possible answer is there must not be a good economic argument. The technology works. Teach them in their language, gamify the learning, bring people to their best natural names. Another example, the vast majority of healthcare in the world is either absent or delivered by the equivalent of nurse practitioners and very, very sort of stressed local village doctors. Why do they not have the doctor assistant that helps them in their language treat whatever with, again, perfect healthcare? I can just go on. There are lots and lots of issues with this world of the digital world. It feels like that we're all in our own ships in the ocean and we're not talking to each other. In our hunger for connectivity and connection, these tools make us lonelier. We've got to fix that, right? But these are fixable problems. They don't require new physics. They don't require new discoveries. We just have to decide. So when I look at this future, I want to be clear that the arrival of this intelligence, both at the AI level, the AGI, which is general intelligence, and then superintelligence, is the most important thing that's going to happen in about 500 years, maybe 1,000 years in human society, and it's happening in our lifetime. So don't screw it up.
I don't really know how to follow that up other than to say, I agree. The arrival of artificial general intelligence, eventually superintelligence, will be the single most important thing to happen to humans in a millennia, because again, it's going to help us rapidly develop our society, and it's going to help us rapidly solve the world's most complex problem. He literally listed off some of the most complex problems in the history of man, in the history of the universe, with dark matter and dark energy. And we may be able to solve those with artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. And the fact that we can solve cancer and we can reach fusion energy and we can stem the tide of global warming with carbon capture and geothermal energy and all these other radical ideas that, we just need the computational power to help us solve that problem. And at the end of the day, it literally is, we need more brain cells. And the only way we have more brain cells is to have artificial brain cells within these models. I think it's worthwhile. I think it's the greatest thing that we can achieve, at least within our lifetimes and in several generations, like you said, 10 or 15 generations. That's one reason we started this podcast and that we started this journey, is we know businesses will be able to lift themselves up and do great things. But it's hard to convince people of that, because you hear about these solving cancer, like, what does that have to do with my business? It's the same thought process to solve cancer is the same thought process to automate your logistics, to automate your manufacturing. It's the same thought process, because it's a data problem. And so if you get your data and your processes where they need to be, you can utilize the same tools they're utilizing to solve these world's hardest problems. And that's the beauty of it. You can do it in an affordable manner, and you can do it in a pragmatic way, one step at a time. And I really hope you do that. And so I'm challenging you, if you're listening to this and you haven't taken the plunge to learn more about AI, I'm challenging you, go to deeplearning.ai, go to edX, go to, Harvard Extension School or MIT or Microsoft.com/learn, and just start your journey. AI 101 classes on all of those type of things. Learn the basics things. LinkedIn Learning, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn Learning. So if you have LinkedIn Premium, go to linkedin.com/learning, and you have access to all these free sources that you're already paying for LinkedIn Premium. I challenge you to start that journey if you haven't. And if you have started that journey, reach out and let us know what you're working on. And we would love to hear that. Again, linktree.com/digitalmeld, and right at the top of there is the contact form or reach out to us. All of our links to our social media. We want to hear what you're working on. We want to hear the problems you're trying to solve. And we'd love to feature you if you're working on some really cool things. And if you just need feedback and want to hear our insights, we're happy to provide those. Again, I just love being an evangelist and talking about this. I am as every bit thrilled about this as Eric Schmidt, and I feel that I'm blessed to be born in this generation. Much like when Back to the Future came out, we were like, oh, we're going to have flying cars and hoverboards. I'm a little upset we don't have that. Just to know that the current generation of children, my nieces and nephews, and they're going to probably see the first humans land on Mars and live on Mars, and possibly they may live on Mars themselves, or their children may live on Mars. We just keep reaching for the stars, and I think AI is going to help us do that. And the big thing is going to help so many people. If we can cure cancer, I had a sister die of cancer last year. If I could have her back today, I would do that. And I was there with her for months as she was going through treatment in MD Anderson here in Houston. And those are amazing people. And I want them to not have to worry about having to have the conversation they had to have with me and my family. And if these AI models can help us get that, let's do it. They're going to save millions and millions of lives. As many of you may know, we have a population decline all across the world, so we're going to need to save people's lives. And I think that's a good thing. And again, I challenge, if you haven't gotten started yet, I challenge you to start down your journey. If you have an organization and you want to get started with your organization, start having conversations with your team. Just go to lunch, have a coffee. What's something we could automate in our team? What's one place we could start? Do we have our processes documented? Where's our data live? Just start having those conversations now. There's no reason to wait. It could take you 2 years, but you have to take that first step now. That's the only way to do it, is to have those conversations. And this isn't a problem that's going to just be solved by OpenAI, and it's not going to be solved by Perplexity, and it's not going to be solved by Anthropic and Google and Meta, and name the company you want to name, Groux with XAI. It's going to take a village. It's going to take people unlocking things at a mass scale for this to revolutionize the world. And again, those specific models, the people who are only focusing on a model for this type of cancer, those are the ones that are going to get there first. They're in these general intelligence, general models. And those are great endeavors to solve those approachable problems, and we can make great things. I am an eternal optimist when it comes to technology. As I said before, I think nearly every great thing we have in this world is from technology. Obviously, there's some bad things too. Maybe we should rethought social media and the dopamine hits from that, but that's for another discussion for another day. But no, here's the hoping we're building great things as a species, and we're reaching for the stars again. And I thank you for joining us. We wouldn't be doing this without the tremendous feedback, so please keep that coming. It helps me going. Again, I'm recording this for like the 4th hour now, and I could still talk for another 20 or 30 minutes, but I'll shut up now because you're probably ready to get rid of me. But thanks again. I hope you tune in next week. Until then, spiral out, keep going. We want to hear about your AI and automation journey, and we'd love for you to get involved with Start Small, Think Big. If you'd like to participate or offer feedback, please reach out to us anytime via email at contact@digitalmeld.io, or use the contact form on our website, digitalmeld.io/contact. Also, please help spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing our podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks.